Hello, it's Mark Attwood. Mark Attwood Show, Adventures in a Cosmic Suit. How are you doing? Ireland keeps popping up. And if you haven't seen the video that I put up yesterday or the day before, I'm just going to show you it now because I had to put this up on. I had to put this up on Rumble just because you've got to be careful with YouTube. But it's really worth watching. I called it The Fight for Ireland Against Tyrannical Government. Meet Noreen O'Shea, the fighting Irish woman. The spirit of Noreen is so powerful that everybody should watch this all over the world and share it. I mean, this has only had 1.6 thousand views so far. Please go to Rumble, type in the Mark Attwood Show, find this video, and share it with anybody to inspire them how to stand up against tyranny, which is what God's waiting for us to do. Because she's the woman that I shared a video of her going up to the Taoiseach, Prime Minister of Ireland, Leo Varadkar, and just shouting at him, telling him what a disgrace he is, because he is. And that kind of courage is something that needs to be shared around the world. Wherever you are, go and watch that video and share it. But Ireland's come up a lot recently. I live here. I've been looking into the link between Atlantis and Ireland, and Ireland, the land of the pharaohs, the connections, the megalithic sites here. I've been investigating as much as I can. I'm going to see another one next week. I'm going to make a film about that because this is all connected to everything that's going on right now in the world. And as a piece of serendipity, I was sent a website by somebody a couple of weeks ago, and I was reading it, and then I got an email from the person who owns that website because she's done some incredible work, and that is Anna Steele, otherwise known as Anaya Science Witch, who's here now. Have I said that right?
Yeah, perfect. How are you?
Good, great to meet you.
You too.
So what's the story, Anna?
What's the story? Well, I'm a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. I graduated in 2013, and I've also studied Ayurveda and along the way many other different body therapies, modalities. And I have a big interest in bioelectric healing, so that led me into studying electromagnetics and physics, and I ended up getting a multi-wave oscillator at one point and working with pulsed electromagnetic field therapy and violet rays, because I always wondered how I could accelerate healing. It's my big thing. I was like doing acupuncture on people in clinic, and I was thinking, this is a bit too slow. There's something more to this. But after I graduated, I actually took 10 months off and I went around the world, and I visited China for 3 months, and I followed doctors around hospitals there, and I went to a Qigong conference, and then I went into Europe, and that's where I came across sound healing in Glastonbury. And then I ended up in Peru, and I lived with a Chinese medicine doctor and naturopath there in the jungle, and she was using bioresonance machines to heal cancer in the jungle. And so I kind of absorbed all of this healing from different practitioners over 10 months. And then I got back to New Zealand, and the first week I was back, I was standing in my father's kitchen, and these words came out of my mouth. No one was there. I was there by myself. And they all tumbled out of my mouth, and they were in a clear Irish accent. I was like, what? And just like, and I've never been an Irish accent impersonator or anything like that. It was super weird. And so I went outside, and as I was outside through the night, through the particles of the night, this face kind of loomed out, and it was a green man's face. And I was like, okay, I've got to go to Ireland. And so in 2016, I finally made it to Ireland after doing about a year and a half full-time clinician, acupuncturist clinician. And I went to Ireland. I went into Dublin. My nan's from Ireland, by the way, my mother's mother.
So
born
mine.
in Dublin. Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Maybe they were friends. And I went into Dublin, and then I went to Navan, got my camper car, and then I went straight to Tara, and I stayed in Tara for about 2 days. And then I went all the way up the east coast through Brunaboyne, and then I went through Loch Ness and Giant's Causeway, and then I went over the top through Londonderry, and then to the west coast, and then I came inland a little bit, and then I went back out to the west, and then I came back inland, and then I kind of meandered through Roscommon, ended up going through Carrowkeel, Carramore, and then I went all the way down to Limerick, through down to Kerry, and then up back through Cork, and then I returned to Tara, stayed there one more night, and then I left, and that took me about 17 days. And when I got home, I thought, well, that was kind of unmagical, because I've had really, really strange experiences my whole life. Like if there's something not strange happening, something's weird. And so I thought Ireland would be this kind of, big spiritual journey. And it didn't seem like it at the time. But when I got home, I had this huge mind map on the wall of all these pictures of anatomy and physiology. And I had the map of Ireland because I was going there. Different gods from different cultures, electromagnetic symbols, that kind of thing. And I looked on my wall. I had the map of Ireland, and then I had this other map, and it was called the Nei Jing Tu, and it's a Taoist painting of the inner alchemy of the human body. And when I looked at these two maps, I was like, oh, shoot, they are the same. This is the same. And since then, since 2016, I've been pondering what these correspondences are and what the significance of them is. And I started writing about it seriously, full-time, in January last year, in 2022. And I thought I was going to be writing a 250-page book on Ireland and the Nei Jing Tu and how they match, but it actually has turned into a bit of an alchemical Bible, because I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner with all this other information I want to share to people, and I had it prepared as courses, and I thought, no, it's all just going to go in the book. And so through the writing of this, and also through a spontaneous meditation that happened in that January of last year, I started thinking how to imprint the body of Ireland onto my body as a holographic overlay, while I imprinted the Nei Jing Tu Taoist painting, which is the inner map of the human body and a metaphysical elemental processing. And as I overlaid them together, I had this big spontaneous energy activations, and then I ended up being in a state of bliss for 2 days. I was in the garden with my cats, and it was just this kind of magical being in nature again kind of feeling. And I looked back on it, and it was the time that the moon was in my star sign. And this is a process that is called raising the Christ oil within. When the moon comes into your star sign, every star sign has this happen once a month. You'll get an electromagnetic amplification because of all of the magnetite in your brain and the speeding up of the electron flow through the cerebral spinal fluid. And so all of that contributed into this state that I achieved, and it all started putting itself together quite naturally after that, because I thought, okay, now I have to investigate this raising of the Christ oil. And so going back to 2016, just to add in the final piece of the puzzle, because it does contain 3 pieces, I was listening to the Conor McDarry work, The Wisdom Preserved in Bible and Pyramids, and that just gave me this whole new insight. And I've never learned Irish history at all, but listening to his excuse me, his work, I was like, this sounds like truth. This sounds like truth. I get it. And so I was listening to all of that. And I was also looking at the Om language, and I was making matchups between that Om language and amino acids. Is this, that's a whole other section. So in any sense, I was into Conor McDarry's work, and one of the chapters in that big book that was read out as a 7-hour talk on YouTube. One of the chapters in that book was called The Bible in Irish Book, and his son, Conor McDarry Jr., ended up turning that into a work, like a 230-something page work. And so I read that work out online to contribute that audio into the world for people to hear. So I already had that in my backstory. And so when I started putting together this raising of the Christ oil within as a physiological, alchemical, metaphysical process that humans can do, it started layering it all together. Because the Taoist map of the Neijing 2, which we'll see an image of soon so everyone can get the visual, this is also showing a Qigong movement. So Qigong is the cultivation of energy, and there's a movement or a Qigong practice you can do called the microcosmic orbit, and that's to harmonize the human who stands and lives on the earth with the heavenly cosmos and the earthly telluric forces. And if you harmonize yourself with those, you can be in homeostasis and balance with your environment.
Well, I think I was doing that this morning. And
oh, really? What were you doing?
I'll show you. Because where is it? I took this picture this morning because I was meditating here. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is Carrickeel.
Wow.
Which is, I get called to go there. It's an amazing place. Hello, I have a visitor here. Hang on. What are you doing? My cat. Say hello, which is a bit. Shall I say hello or shall I not say hello?
Hello.
Ooh.
Heavy.
She's not heavy.
What's your name? My name's Anna. Hello.
What's Anna? Say hello. Oh, sorry. She does this to me. Yeah, I think you say the oil of Christ. I've heard it referred to as the chrism oil. Is the same thing?
It's different terminologies, different words, the same kind of thing. Yeah, because basically all of that raising the Christ oil, raising the chrism, sacred secretion, it's said to be all in the Bible, coded. And when you decode it, it is actually speaking about the anatomy and physiology and the cosmology and the harmony between it all. And so I thought this was going to be a 250-page book on Ireland and the Neijing 2 Taoist painting. But then we got into the Bible being an Irish book, and Conor McDarry's work on decoding Hebrew into Old Irish to show us the path of the sun seeker, which is the raising of the Christ oil. And then when you decode things in the Bible, like Jesus Christ of Nazareth was born in a manger at Bethlehem, and you decode all of those words, which I've done in my work, you get all of the anatomy and physiology, and it also relates directly to Taoism and the Chinese medicine viewpoint of the organs. So it just got like, whoa, like a big network and many, many multiple layers. When you stack them all up, you've got the alchemical blueprint of the human body that seems to have its origin in Ireland.
Well, it's so interesting because I've spent 5 years here initially going, what the fuck am I doing here? And then I got all these downloads about it's all about the light. And then I've just learned so much anecdotally from people that know more than me. And then I started reading books and Michael Cesarion. I started listening to his stuff and interviewing people and going to the sites them myself and having experiences here. And then just seeing what's, I have a deep link here, I think, because of my grandmother couldn't have known your grandmother because she was taken out when she was a baby from living.
Oh, like a Pied Piper child that kind of
Well,
thing?
this I don't know, because
Mm.
I used to think it was like an Angela Ashes situation where they were so poor they just took it to London so that she could be brought up. But now I know what I know about child trafficking here, and
Mm.
the terrible satanic things that have been placed upon children here for a very long time. It may be connected with that. So it's deeply interesting to me. I don't present myself as anything other than an amateur sleuth in this scenario, which is why I like inviting people like you on, because you've done a hell of a lot of work. So should we pull up your presentation so you can talk through it?
Yeah, because during the writing of this Irish elixir book, it just kind of all put itself together, and I was like, okay, wow, this is much more than I ever expected it was actually going to be. So
Yeah,
I'll
well,
explain with
I love stuff like
pictures.
that. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, and because it really felt like it was a quest that was given when I walked the land and did walkabout on that land, and then I came back with this mission, and the mission finally 6.5 years I got time to do it, and now we've got this. So
What's interesting is this first slide says the return to the Garden of Eden. It was a couple of
yeah,
years ago. I met a guy here who knows a lot about the history, and he told me that this area in the northwest was the Garden of Eden after the flood.
and just in the northwest and not the whole of Ireland.
He was being specific about the northwest, but
Ah,
it could be the whole of Ireland. But
like northwest as in Fermanagh or Carrickeel.
Sligo, Donegal,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's when I show you that bit, because that's quite interesting actually. That
Okay.
area.
What's that? Oh, sorry, what's that image here on the right?
Oh, so that's the cover design. So I made that. That is a woman. There's an Egyptian Isis,
Yeah.
and then there's a ballet dancer bowing with her wings and the electromagnetic field of polarity therapy chart.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a crucifixion position, but also looking a little bit like the female reproductive organs, showing this kind of birth in a womb, in a birth, which is all about Ireland as well. When we look into the passage tombs and how the light of the father, the masculine, enters the mother earth, and it's all on this cosmological clock that all these different places on Ireland seem to still be aligned with. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Okay, here we go.
So obviously we've got Ireland there with the 4 provinces showing, and then this is the artwork I'm talking about, which is called the Neiging 2, and it means the inner weaving or the inner warp. So it's talking about the threads of a tapestry or a carpet. And if you inspect it, you can see from the profile, it's also looking like Ireland, because most people say that Ireland looks like a body or a fetus or a bear facing west. And when we inspect the Neiging 2, we can also see that the features are actually quite similar. So this is what I first saw, and I was like, hang on, I've got to inspect this. So it's obviously not going to be, I've got another picture overlaying some things to make it easier. But if we know that this Qigong painting is a metaphysical, energetical movement that involves the microcosmic orbit, which is basically flowing energy from the base of the spine, from the tailbone, up the spinal fluid, through into the brain, where the cerebral spinal fluid gets made and bathes the brain and the central nervous system of the spine. And then it comes that's called the Do meridian, and it's the sun meridian. It's the masculine yang meridian, and that meridian comes all the way up through the brain, and then in the mouth, on the upper gum, where the teeth and the gums meet, that's the end point. And then the next meridian to go all the way down the front is called the Ren meridian. It's the moon, female, Mary, yin meridian, and that one starts on the lower gum and goes all the way down to finish between the reproductive orifice and the anus, anal orifice. So that's a place of joining in the bottom, and this is a place of joining in the top, just like 2 circuits. And these would be like spark gaps. And so to join this in the mouth, when we do microcosmic orbit, we touch our tongue to the tip of our palate, and that closes the circuit. And that is how you utilize the microcosmic orbit. So that's basically what is happening. And if we look, just going through briefly at the characters, the 7 main characters. So you could say that they're the 7 chakras or the 7 nerve plexuses, where the chakra points have these energetic highways, junctions of nerves. And in the bottom there, you'll see this is the counties of Kerry and Cork and Waterford, and there's a lot of water in there, the south coast, and there's a lot of water, and there's 2 little characters in there called the boy and the girl at the treadmill, and they are working tirelessly. Or we get also around the Neijing too, there's a lot of script, and that's actually poetry describing what the characters are doing, which has been translated to English, showing us that the boy and girl at the treadmill are working tirelessly to move the waters to the northeast. And this is showing us that the water is being guided up the spine. And this is how we want to utilize the microcosmic orbit to raise the Christ oil within. And the oil is the cerebral spinal fluid. And so coming up through there, you'll see the next character. He's a man ploughing an ox. And this is basically the intestines and the planting the seeds in the intestines. It's all about digestion, but it's also about making the soil fertile. So it's a bit of a reproductive fertility theme in this region, which is the lower dantian or the lower cauldron in Chinese medicine. And in Irish, they also have 3 cauldrons. So there's these energetic centers of the lower, the middle, and the upper. And in Maori medicine from New Zealand, or Maori healing, they call them 3 hearts. So it's dantians, cauldrons, hearts. And that's basically the lower energy center. And then if we come up the east coast of Ireland through Wicklow, and then we're getting into Dublin, you can see basically there's a big fire there. And that is the acupuncture point called the gate of fire, the gate of life, or the gate of destiny. And I've matched that up with Dublin, especially because Dublin had this big medieval fence around it with lots of little gates. So it was a very gated place. And that is a acupuncture point that exists between the kidneys, which are considered the powerhouse of the whole body. So the capital of Ireland is also the powerhouse of the whole body or the land. And then opposite that fire, we have this lady. She's the only soul lady in the painting, and she's called the Maiden at the Wheel. And she is basically representing the stomach and the spleen, or the digestive organs, which share a nerve plexus with the kidneys on that same level. And she is showing us that she's weaving the food into blood, because everything that we ingest as food and nutrients gets turned into blood, then it gets sent through the bloodstream to deliver to the whole body and all of the cells, all the nutrients they need. So she's busy doing that. And because she's on the Ren moon meridian, she can be considered as the Mother Mary. And she's also weaving a red ribbon, which flows all the way up and then into the head of Ireland at the top of the painting. And that can be representing the umbilicus, and also connecting out through Limerick and Clare is the River Shannon entrance, which would be like the belly button. And then this red scarlet ribbon has biblical ties back to the house of Judah and the twin brothers of Judah. And one of them came out of the mother first, put his hand out, then put it back in. Then the other brother put his hand out, and the wet nurse put a red scarlet ribbon around. So we can weave biblical things into this as well, which is so fascinating. And then if we move up the east coast, we've got a little gate on that waterway, that cerebral spinal fluid, which would be technically in the position of Brunaboyne Valley, the Valley of the White Cow, with the Newgrange and Nowthendouth. And And then opposite that, we've got this other character, and he's called the Cowherd Boy. So we've got this cow theme happening, the Valley of the White Cow and the Cowherd Boy. And he's actually standing on what looks like an Earth mound. It's also been called in the Neijing to, it's the Milky Way galaxy because it's a spiral galaxy. And he's holding in his hand this sticky looking thing. And it's actually the Ursa Major, Ursa Minor constellation. And that forms the Big Dipper. And when that set of constellations moves around the agricultural cycle in 1 year, we get the swastika, which is the St. Bridget's cross. And so this is showing the cosmological connection, and that constellation always points to the North Pole star. And the North Pole is your heart, right? So this is showing us that this body, this land, has a connection outside the body to the greater cosmos. And so all of this section I've just described what we call the middle cauldron. So that is involving the heart and the lungs and the intestines and the stomach and the spleen, digestive organs, and also the kidneys. So that's all happening on a physiological level, but also a metaphysical level. And then finally, we get up into the head, which is essentially Ulster. And, this is Northern Ireland. And essentially, if we chopped off.
Been separated from the body.
Indeed, which is really fascinating when you start thinking about the control that's happened. And if this island of Ireland is the original Garden of Eden, someone wants to control her brain, right?
No shit.
And so, this is the work leads somewhere with this as well, which came as a surprise. But so if we inspect the final head of the Neijing 2, we come up to the brainstem, which we could consider as Dundalk flowing into Newry through the Sleeve Gullion Gap, which is an olivine basalt rock where a lot of water flows have formed all this green stone. And in the Neijing 2, the poetry is actually calling it the jade, I think it's a jade pillow. So there's a green stone, jade is a green stone, sort of referencing there. There's a lot of references. I'm just giving an overview. And then if we look at the picture of the Neijing 2, you see all these mountains on top, these peaks. And that I'm making a crossover connection with the Giant's Causeway, which is, this very mysterious volcanic area that has a lot of legend and mythology surrounding it, which links itself to the land of the gods and this higher beings. Or
it's a dimensional causeway, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll tell you something funny, Anna. I did an interview with a couple of amazing women the other day from Perpetual Hearts, and we talked about. They mentioned the Giant's Causeway, and they told me about a video that had been taken by somebody on a phone that showed a doorway opening and closing.
I've seen that.
Yeah, well, I linked to it and thought because everybody wanted to see it, and then I went back to the comments the next day, and the video had been taken down.
No way.
Yeah, and that's always a good sign.
Yeah, it's so tricky because it was all fuzzy and blurry, and it was so fast. It was like,
that was definitely a door.
And it came out of nowhere and then kind of fused itself back into. Yeah.
I mean, I love that place, but anyway.
Yeah, I visited there that one time. It was just But obviously, we know that under the Giant's Causeway and also connecting all through Ireland and through to Cash, there's all these underground caves, and that can be seen in this artwork as well. If we look just above the Giant's Causeway mountain peaks on the top of the head, and then we look below the waterway and we see these mountain peaks. They look like they're mirrored, but that is showing us that those are the caves.
Now this place is, in Carrickeel, there's a cave there called Gollum's Cave.
Is there?
As in Gollum, as in Lord of the Rings, Tolkien.
Like, my precious.
Yeah, exactly. And if you go down into that cave, and it's quite tricky, there's and it's the same as the caves of Kesh, which are definitely giants abodes or doorways, as far as I'm concerned. In
Yeah.
both places, there's like a rock formation blockage, but it looks like it's been cut by something and put in there to block going any further, going underground, which I think is what it is.
Oh,
All I'm experiencing at the moment is blockages for all of these types of things all over England and Ireland.
I think that was maybe like a global thing, because I went to the Bosnian Pyramid Energy Conference in 2018, and they had all of the Ravne tunnels that connect, I think, 350 meters deep, 7 layers of tunnels, and they've been blocked up, which
Yeah.
they're now excavating, but they carbon dated some of the material and the unblocking material to be about 5,000 years old, which is interesting when we look back to the megaliths on Ireland and them being, dated around 3,000 BC, which is about 5,000 years old. So something maybe happened at that time.
Keep going. I don't want to slow you down. Could.
So if we follow round to where we would find Donegal, we see this blue man who is signifying the Buddha, the Bodhisattva. And he's technically sitting where the optical eyes would be if we're looking west as a profile. And it's also, these optical eyes are obviously connecting into the pineal gland. The pineal gland sits between the third ventricle of the brain and the thalamus, which are the two Easter eggs in the brain that are the control room that feed back and cross information through the whole brain. And the ventricles are where the cerebral spinal fluid is made, so we can then look back eastward to Loch Ness, the biggest lake in Ireland, and this is symbolizing this watery production site. So we've got optical eyes, pineal gland, cerebral spinal fluid, all of that stuff in that area. And then underneath him we've got the second monk, and he's called the foreign blue-eyed monk. So he's foreign, that means he's not Chinese, and he's blue-eyed, so he's maybe from a Western land, typical features of different races. And he's got his arms up in the air like this, and he's essentially holding up the heavens. And next to him, there's a little square-looking thing, and it's blue, and it's divided in half with this rainbow lower, and then in the upper there's a rainbow. So this is the rainbow bridge, which we can relate to the Norse Yggdrasil, tree of life. And that pool of water there, standing next to the foreign blue-eyed monk, is showing us the water of the mouth. So here's in the mouth. And as you can see in that painting, the mouth is kind of open like a Pac-Man. And then in Ireland, below Donegal and sort of Fermanagh area, this is a bit of an open mouth situation as well. So that's the main characters, but that's just the beginning. Yeah. So if we inspect in the center there, this is where I've overlaid the human anatomy upon that Taoist painting to show that it is actually anatomically correct. So we can start off in the lower again. We've got the urinary bladder and the reproductive organs, the bottom of the spine, the tailbone, and the sacrum, the lumbar. And then as we come up to where the lumbar joins into the thoracic, this is where the kidneys live. And this, you can see, is directly across from that fire that I'm calling Dublin, and directly across from the stomach, which I'm calling the maiden at the wheel. And then up from there, we've got the heart and the lungs at the level of Brunaboyne, Tara, Ishnak, the centre, the centre, and Ishnak is essentially the geographical centre of Ireland as well. So this is kind of the middle, Mead, middle cauldron. And then as we go up, we've obviously got the occiput and then into the brainstem, and you can see the brain, optical eyes, and the nose and the mouth, and where that opens and closes is where those two sun and moon meridians join.
Ishnak is where the goddess Eru resides underneath the stone of separation, otherwise known as the cat's cradle, I think.
Yes, the cat stone.
Cat stone, that's it. Cat stone.
Yeah.
Like it's the original name is the stone of separation.
That's an interesting name. Is it meaning the separation between her and Luke, or
no, between the two worlds?
and
you can
okay,
go you can go underneath the stone, and the stone itself is the shape of Ireland from behind.
Ooh, that's very interesting, because that's like the macrocosm.
It's huge, but it is the shape of Ireland, exactly.
Oh wow! Oh, I have to get a hold of that image.
Well, I made a film about it. I'll send you a link.
Oh, I'd love to see that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because that would be like the microcosm inside the macrocosm inside the which is the microcosm of the macrocosm. So it's like this fractalized holographic pattern.
Well, if it is a holographic universe, then this fractalization makes complete sense.
Well, what I've researched as well about this, and that why the book series is called Return to the Garden of Eden, is that Rudolf Steiner said that Ireland was actually the original Garden of Eden, and before what he calls the Luciferic energy, what I call the adversary energy, came into paradise, or the Garden of Eden, was copied and put aside. And so what we're in now is the copy, and Ireland is the original untouched blueprint.
So in the mystery school teaching, they talk about this being a facsimile Earth. Did you hear that?
Yeah. No, you just went quiet, so I thought it cut out. Yeah, so a copy.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So that means, because of all of this stuff that's happened to Ireland and all these stones that have been moved around, it's like, can we get it back?
Oh yeah, we are getting it back.
Yeah. And what I will also wonder about this work, it's like, if the person can overlay all of this onto themselves and perform their own microcosmic orbit with all of this in mind, can we collectively change it with that intention?
I think so.
Yeah, me too.
And this is coming from multiple angles right now, which is really interesting. So there's no
right. So we're all getting serious.
All divine timing. Next slide.
Yeah. Okay, so this is showing a map of Ireland created by Anders Cowlands, and this is on his work is on a website called megaliths with an s.net/Ireland. And this is a really great map. It's an interactive map, so everything there you can click on and it will send you to the more details. And he's found all of the constellation megaliths of Ireland, and then he's put them on his map, and then he's gone through them all, and he's shown and he's drawn everything on the stones to show that this constellation has been drawn on this stone. It does live in this area, and that area, the Irish name, etymologically means this. And so that gives us a lot of clues and evidence that, these stones are, where they are for reasons that have a lot to do with the anatomy and physiology. And then on the other side, we've got this circular wheel, and this is a zodiac wheel. And this is created by a lady called Eudora Anaya Perry. And it's a 12 mineral cell salts zodiac wheel. And she has compared the 12 zodiac animals going around their fixed star positions. And she's been comparing those to the 12 mineral salts that we need as ingredients for our body. But the reason I've put these next to each other is to show that all of these megalithic sites on Ireland, they are showing the fixed stars in the correct position. And so when we start zooming into this and going in further and further, we can start matching this map up with the Neijing 2 and seeing the correspondences there as an energetic system. Because what do we know about the 12 zodiac is that it's 3 divisions of 4 elements: earth, air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water, upper, middle, lower. That's 12. And that is the energy movement around the body in that microcosmic orbit through elemental phase changes. And this is actually what I've shown in the work, is that the land of Ireland, the geology, the geography is actually showing us that also. It's not just about the standing stones, it's about the rivers, the mountains, the lakes, the volcanic type of geology, what I've mentioned in the brainstem of Dundalk and Uri, the gap, the Slieve Gullion, that is olivine basalt, and that takes a lot of pressure. When water gets pressured through stone, through a small gap, it is producing these certain types of crystals. So that's what those maps are. And let's have a look at the next one. So building on the layers, we've got Ireland. And so the pink line is showing us the trajectory of the Mai meridian. Mai is a meridian pathway, and that is going from the tailbone and then finishing in the mouth, where I have located that as Loch Earn, lower and upper. And that's just to show this meridian pathway. There's another one that goes down from the mouth, down the front. And on the other image, you can see that there's some main acupuncture points there showing this trajectory. And the dew going up the spine, the pink line is in red. And the wren going down the front, following River Shannon, which does connect up to Loch Earn, goes all the way down, and then finishing or passing through Kerry and Cork, and then finishing kind of in Wexford area. So this is to start building on the layer. So when you want to do, if you want to do this microcosmic orbit as your body, as Ireland, as that holographic fractal, then you start to get to know your body through the acupuncture points, which have names, which translate into meanings, which mean certain things in a metaphysical, energetic movement kind of way. So then you can start really familiarizing yourself with your own body in a really fun way, so you can become your own self-healer, your own doctor, by moving energy and
So
knowing what you're doing.
What you're saying is we're all Irish.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, maybe. So let's have a look at the next one. Okay, this is me putting the Neijing 2 characters onto the body of Ireland, Aire, just to give it a bit more visualization through the imagination. So we've already met all those characters. We've been all the way around microcosmic orbit. This is what they would look like if they're on Ireland. So then the next piece of it all is who is in what position, what lake, all of that kind of stuff. And I find it interesting, up in where the blue-eyed foreign monk is, up in Fermanagh, we've got Loch Earn and Loch Derg. And so this is really interesting, because Loch Earn has got two divisions. There's lower and an upper, but the lower is in the upper and the upper is in the lower. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, well, that's where the mouth opens and closes. So this is showing us that they switch through the closing and the joining and the putting the tongue on the mouth, on the roof of the mouth. And then Loch Derg, which is above Loch Earn, this is essentially the parotid gland, and this is where the saliva springs out and wets the mouth. And all of these people, characters, going around, I've actually started relating them into the biblical coding as well. And this one I find fascinating, because I've related him to Moses. So he's got a lot of Moses symbology, because for one thing, Moses, when I tried to look into the etymology of Moses, there was nothing really coming up. It often said there is no etymological root for the name Moses. But when I thought about it, I was like, Moses, and you swap the M to an N, you get noses. And you put a G there, you get gnosis. So the mouth and the nose is the gnosis. And Moses is all about the Ten Commandments, the gnosis coming from God, the word of God, the place of the speech, the mouth. And Moses is all about parting the Red Sea. And what happens when you look in a mouth, a human mouth, you see red flesh and you see a wetness. So this is the Red Sea that gets parted when the microcosmic orbit meridians opening and closing. And then when Moses wanted to feed his thirsty followers, and he asked God what to do, God said, take your staff and tap on this rock and get spring water. And so this is actually the parotid gland feeding the spring water into the mouth. And in the Neijing too, we can see that as a square looking pool of water. And it's actually, when we look back to the original artwork and you look deeply into the caves, you'll see a little spring of water coming out of the cave, and it's filling up that swimming pool. It's fascinating. And so Moses is also all about the Ark of the Covenant. And the Ark of the Covenant is made from acacia wood, which is a Freemasonic symbol for immortality. And acacia is where you get dimethyltryptamine from. So this is relating into altered states symbologically. And then the Ark of the Covenant is storing inside of it the Ten Commandments, a cup of mana, which is this golden elixir, which in the Chinese Taoist painting, this microcosmic orbit is all about producing saliva in the mouth. And when you produce enough saliva, you have to swallow it in a particular way. And that is called the golden elixir. And this is contributing back into the birth of the Jesus Christ seed within, that then has to be born, conceived, born, and then rebirthed into from a physical into a spiritual body through this movement around Ireland. So it just goes on and on and on. It's like trying to describe a circle, and we just have to start somewhere.
Yeah. It's amazing.
So the next, let's have a look. What did I do? What did I put? Okay, so I'm just layering up maps. So this is putting the solstice and the equinox onto Ireland. And obviously at the solstice position, I've put it in line with Bruna Boyne, New Grange. It should be a little bit more tilted. I've made different maps since then, I think. But interesting because with Carrowkeel and Bruna Boyne are kind of like diagonal opposites, because Bruna Boyne, New Grange, gets the winter solstice sunrise, and then going around the microcosmic orbit, coming down into the Renmai, which is basically where Carrowkeel is, just below Fermanagh. This is turning into the Mary Moon female channel. Carrowkeel lets the summer solstice sun and at sunset. So this is the sun rising up and then starting to set and turn into the yin. So it's yang turning to yin, the sunrise turning to sunset. And there's the only two roof boxes that do that alignment that I know of.
Yeah, I mean, they call them tombs here, but they're not tombs. And I was told the way the sun comes in through them is very particular, and has it was to do, well, the Garden of Eden guy told me about the Garden of Eden, told me it was something to do with if it came through at a certain time, they'd know if they were going to survive the winter, that kind of thing, with the light coming in. These are very advanced structures, even though they look like piles of stones. And I still don't know exactly what they're for, but interestingly, today or recently, they put up signs saying "Do not enter," which is
on Carrowkeel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've long talked about the government here going around rewriting history by putting crosses on really old things to make them look like they're Christian, like literally rewriting history in stone. And there's just portal to there's more megalithic structures in this country than anywhere else in the world. It's there's a lot to this.
It's like the original Earth clock.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's what I'm trying to illustrate with this bit, is that we've got the solstice and the equinox in the four directions, the beginning of the agricultural cycle, And then obviously we've got the cross-quarter days in between that of Samhain and Lugnasa and Imbolc and Beltane. But putting that, slotting that on to Ireland, and then around the outside, we've got Angus Cowland's observations of the 12 zodiac, then we can start plugging in the zodiac archetypes. So what you just said about Carrakiel and it being, to do with the agricultural cycle, and if the light came in at a certain time and angle, that would be good harvest or not. In that place of the zodiac, we've got Virgo, and Virgo is the virgin of the harvest. And so she's the Virgin Mary and connected all into the mouth and the esophagus and the food that we eat. So we can go around all of these sites of the megaliths that are on Ireland and then start relating them back to the archetypes that relate to the Bible, archetypes that relate to the human anatomy and physiology, archetypes that relate to the Chinese Taoist stuff, and whatever else, because it's all the same pattern. But the reason is, for what I'm guiding my work into, is this is a tool for self-healing.
Yeah.
And so the next one in the grayscale, that's just showing us the upper, the middle, and the lower cauldrons, and that these are in 3 sections with 12, with 4 elements in each, making 12 zodiac of earth, air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water, earth, air, fire, water. And this is the alchemical energetics inside of these movements. Yeah.
Okay. Onwards.
And so getting to know a bit more about the microcosmic orbit and this raising the chrism, sacred secretion, raising the Christ oil within. There's the little man sitting on the chair, sitting on the earth, and then his heart. You can see there's a red dot in the heart, the middle cauldron, and it's connecting out to the North Star via the Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Big Dipper, which always points to the North Star. So it's showing us this alignment that happens through the top of the head, the Baikoi point, the 100 meetings, which I'm putting as Rathlin Island on Ireland, which is a weird one because it's a figure 7. And if you draw a line straight up through Rathlin, it goes through Faroe Island in Scotland. And then it would be located going through Iceland, and next to Greenland is where the Mercator map for Mount Meru was said to have been, which shows us that Mercator map actually shows us 4 provinces of Ireland with the Mead middle as the black rock in the middle. Maybe that is another fractal suggesting that. So through the top of the head, we're getting we're able to receive and send cosmic information, and then through the heart, this is connecting us to the North Pole, North Star. And Angus Cowland's on his megalithic maps is showing that Tare in German is meaning the fulcrum or the balance point, showing that the North Pole is the middle point of everything. And then if we look to the middle, we've got a geocentric model of the cosmos, our local planets. And geocentric means you put the Earth in the middle, the moon goes around that. It takes 28.5 days-ish. And then the sun goes around them both. And to do one full circuit, that takes about 365 days. There have been alterations, as we know, to all of the calendars. 360 makes more sense because it's one complete circuit with the angles. But this is showing us that when the moon comes into alignment with the fixed stars of the zodiac, the constellations, and they follow the same pattern and they go around, and that takes a certain amount of time. And when the moon comes into alignment with the sign that you were born under, your birthday, this causes an electromagnetic amplification because of what the moon does as a compression effect on the Earth. And so when all of that alignment takes place, your magnetic field starts becoming enhanced. And that is a lot to do with the cerebral spinal fluid in the brain, because in the brain, we have the substance called magnetite, and it's the most magnetic substance out of all of the elements. And so when this compression effect takes effect on our tidal system of our waterways in our body, and we're moving energy through a tiny little gap in just in front of the brain stem. It's called the aqueduct of Sylvius, and it's basically like a little hose getting smaller and smaller, and that's where you're trying to squeeze the cerebral spinal fluid through. And that gap on Ireland is basically the gap called Sleeve Gullion. And when that happens, there's a piece of the brainstem that has these, it's called the medulla oblongata. It's a place of marrow, and it has these two bodies called olivary bodies. And then in front of that, there's a pyramidal complex, a crossing over of nerves. And so when this water is squeezed through that area, it's going through this zone containing the olivary bodies and this cross, and this is known as the crucifixion cross. And the medulla oblongata of the olivary bodies is the Garden of Olives, the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus prayed before he was arrested and put on the cross. So this is the part of the crucifixion story. So the Mound of Olives is the medulla with the olivary bodies. So you can keep bringing it back into the biblical archetypes told through personifications, and then when we turn those names through etymology into their real name word meaning, we get anatomy and physiology. Because what is Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane? It means the oil press. And so what are we trying to do? We're trying to squeeze this oil through the cerebral, through the aqueduct of Sylvius to get into the brain, the cave, the upper tomb, the place where Jesus was cloistered in before he was resurrected. So it's all coming back to the cosmology as the macro archetype, and then the stories that are told from that as what we have as these biblical texts, and then also Irish legends. I've put that into the work as well, like Finn McCool.
Yeah.
So he's all about the salmon of knowledge, and the salmon is the only fish that swims upstream. So we have this swimming up the spine kind of theme, and his first name Finn, well, that's a fish, and so this can relate to the Jesus archetype as well.
Wow. At the risk of sounding stupid, how do you find out when the moon is rising in your birthday of each month? Is that
there's a very great website called moontracks.com, and on their website they've got a tab on the left hand side. It's a golden looking tab, and the second button you would push on that, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it will show you your entire year, and you can start pulling out all that information, copy and paste it, whatever, and you can plan your entire year. You just have to make sure you time zone convert it, and you'll notice that it takes about 2.1 days for the moon to go from your sign to the next, and that sign to the next. This is a 2.1 day window of energetic amplification where you could be doing this microcosmic orbit to help yourself maximize, optimize your energy flow.
and how do you do the microcosmic orbit?
Through visualization and through feeling. You know, you could call it like a somatic exercise. You want to get in touch with how your body feels, and if you follow these maps, you know, the acupuncture points and the Neijing too, you can really start to imagine, oh, well, you know, if I'm flowing it up my spine, it's got to start down here, and then as I get up, you know, you start visualizing it. It's pretty simple. You just have to sit, but you have to be grounded. So it is a cosmic telluric exercise. So if you're not grounded, you could actually do yourself harm because you don't want to be moving energy in a circuit that cannot discharge into the earth.
Yeah.
Because then you can go very imbalanced in the mind, and then you could actually, instead of anti-aging, you could age faster.
Yeah. Okay.
Because this is an anti-aging, longevity, immortality practice. The golden elixir, the drink of the gods, the mana, cup of mana from heaven, the mead, the yellow golden jade elixir. So yeah, and this is the story of Finn McCool too. Like, he went in the lake to help the lady find her ring, and he circled the lake 3 times, which is Jesus going around the Garden of Gethsemane 3 times, because the cerebral spinal fluid flows in the body 3 times to 4 times a day. But when he got out, she had cast a trick on him, and he aged like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
really old, really quick.
yeah, so there's all these, like, and also in the Tir Nanuj story about him going off with Nimue to the land of the immortals, and then Osin, right? And then he wanted to come back and visit his dad, Finn McCool. And when he got back, she warned him not to touch the ground. And when he did, he aged and died. So it's all of this immortality, but there's a trick to it. Like,
Anna, this is brilliant. But we're going to have to do a part 2.
Let's do that.
We're going to have to do a part 2 because I've got to go and do lifts, as I said, and then I've got a live show to do in 20 minutes. So,
wow, okay, you're on the ball. Yeah.
So that's been a solid hour, and I really appreciate it. I'll get in touch with you, and we'll do part 2 very soon. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
I want to do it that way because I want to go back and watch this and absorb it all, and then. Yeah, but that's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Check out the images, and you'll start to sort of
That's amazing work, and we will see you very soon.
Okay. Have a beautiful day.
Say hello
Thanks
to
for
Bali.
having me.
Thank you.
Hello, Bali.
See you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.